the Becoming a Smart Church panel discussion. I am the Reverend Renee Ruchotze. I'm the Leadership Development Consultant for the Central East Regional Group. So you have your St. Lawrence staff and you also have your CERG staff. And you get roughly 1/4 of our time. So I'm up here in upstate New York quite a bit and I love being here. So it's great to see you all here for this workshop. We have a fabulous group of panelists. We have Jeff Deacon from the UU congregation of Binghamton. We have Holberg from the UU Church of Buffalo. We have Jim DeLoisio. Perfect. I had to practice that about 20 times. And I shouldn't be throwing stones in that class. From right here, the First UU Society of Syracuse. But before we get started with the panel part, I wanted to talk a little bit about an overview of healthy congregations or smart church, where the smart church version is the Unitarian Universalist version. The Healthy Congregations program was actually put together by the Lutherans, so you have to do a lot of theological translating. So I'm going to start out with this overview, and we're going to hit some key concepts: anxiety, what the goals are of the smart church program, triangulation, the emotional field, and the roller coaster of change. And then we'll have our panelists tell their stories, and then we'll have a chance to do some Q&A. And I was going to have you write questions, but we have a small enough group that I think we'll be able to just have you ask questions from the floor, so we'll go with that method. I have two things in my hand. It's always confusing. What do I click, and what do I just click? Yeah. So I want to start out talking about anxiety. And now anxiety is a very normal part of our lives. We get anxious about things like the gas gauge going down and the gas light coming on and the little dot sort of disappearing as it goes toward empty. But what I want to talk about is chronic anxiety. It's anxiety that's sort of latent in everything you do. There's things that are going on in the world right now. I've got this comic. Leroy was disturbed to learn that the Earth was not only hurtling through space orbiting the sun, but also spinning on its axis at hundreds of miles an hour. So we all have anxieties that are ongoing in our lives. Now there's two ways to react, or to respond to anxiety. You can react, which is where you let your lizard brain do the talking, if you will, or you can be more responsive. So, if you're being reactive in the congregation, it tends that no one tends to take stands or to operate from principles. They tend to just react to whatever happens in the moment. Leaders who are reactive in chronic anxious situations tend to just be directionless. They, whatever the crisis of the day is, they're responding to that. So there's a lot of things that go on in those situations. Another thing that happens when you have chronic anxiety in the system is that there's a phenomenon we call psychic clumping, where people tend to become more dependent on one another. They tend to focus on the weaknesses of the congregation. Oh, we don't have any kids. You look at what you're not doing well. And the leadership tends to be indecisive. They tend to just smooth things over, be conflict avoidant. So, okay, how about this motto? If you are unhappy for any reason, we will feel really bad. And so this idea that you just want everything to just go smoothly. Another thing that happens when there's a lot of chronic anxiety in your congregation is you tend to look for villains or scapegoats. Oh, if only the minister's sermons were more engaging, we'd grow. And then on leaders, they're really encouraged to act as rescuers. So, wow, we'll just appoint Jeff to the stewardship committee and he'll make sure the budget comes into the black. So it's a way of putting all the anxiety on one person or one part of the system. So, honey, I'm home, drop everything you're doing and pay attention to me. So it's putting all your focus in one area. Now, a temptation when we have anxious anxiety in the system is to look for a quick fix. You don't want to process anything, you just throw money at it, call the contractor, fire the person in the position and rehire someone else, rewrite your bylaws. Sometimes that's a way that could be a quick fix. And what happens with the leadership is you also tend to just, if we had a story about this person volunteered to be treasurer and nobody else wanted to do it, so great, but maybe that's not the best person in that position. So relax and settle in, because we're not going anywhere until each and every one of you is sporting Grandma's idea of an attractive smile. So there's this pushing, projecting our own desires onto one area of the congregation. Also, there's a lot of chronic anxiety in the system. There's secrecy, which is a little bit different than confidentiality. There's sort of gossip, half stories, suspicion, and the leadership tend to avoid transparency. They might be stonewalling. They might have a lot of closed board meetings, executive sessions when executive sessions aren't appropriate. And this happens quite often if there's been some sort of legal situation in the congregation where you're afraid that if it comes out, there's going to be bad publicity and those sorts of things. And it's those kinds of situations can lead us away from transparency, which in our congregationally structured organizations, we need to be as transparent as possible. Archbishop Rowan, we present this covenant to you on behalf of ourselves and 1 billion other people who we have hidden behind this screen. So there's also a transparency of how many of you have gotten this, oh, I'm coming to you and I'm speaking for a whole bunch of other people in the congregation and they're upset because, and really there's, one or two and their dog. Another sign of chronic anxiety is that people don't pay attention to boundaries. They act without authority. They overfunction, maybe. For example, you might have people who show up and start greeting even though they hadn't signed up for greeting because they feel like the people who are supposed to be greeters aren't doing a good job or something like that. Or coffee, make the coffee before the coffee volunteer shows up. And then the leaders, when there's a lot of anxiety, they quite often will sort of bulldoze through decision-making rather than letting people share their thoughts and feelings. So we have the decision-making in our board meetings down to a science. It's not easy, and we tried it before and it didn't work, it costs too much, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.